Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 466 for the 24th of September 2017. Richard Saunders here with you from a very warm and toasty Sydney, Australia. In fact, yesterday they said it was a record-breaking heatwave day again, the hottest September day ever recorded. Wow. Coming up on this week's episode of the Skeptic Zone, we're going to kick off with a little report from Susan Gerbic from Guerrilla Skepticism. Susan is making her way through Europe. She's ended up at the European Skeptics Congress. I have a quick chat to her about how that's going, because right now it's sort of right in the middle of that Congress. And also we'll hear some other reports where she went to Sweden and Denmark and visited skeptics in the pub. That sounds like a good tour to me. Susan Gerbic, European tour. Following that, it's a story about the upcoming Bent Spoon Award from Australian Skeptics. Now, the Bent Spoon is the annual award given to the most preposterous piece of paranormal or pseudoscientific piffle, and it's open to nominations. If you know of an organisation, an individual, and a product in Australia you think is worthy of the Bent Spoon. Anyway, this story coming up is a report about some of the current nominations for the Bent Spoon Award. And that award will be given out during the annual convention dinner coming up in November. After that, it's Brew Ha Ha Science from Australia's Science TV. Kelly Wong talking about what seems to be the discovery that an ancient Viking was in fact a female all along and not a male. Then we have a new segment from our good friend Professor Paul Willis, A Piece of His Mind. Paul Willis will give you a piece of his mind. He's going to be talking about heroes on the big screen, but should we be looking there to solve the world's problems? After that, it's another update about the anti-vaccination Dr. John Piesse, and it seems that he has indeed been suspended from practice. But there is more to the story than that, and other ramifications. An update later on in the show. Then to round off the show, a grain of salt with Eran Segev. This week, Eran chats to Yoav Landsman about his work with Space IL and the $30 million Google Lunar XPRIZE to get to the moon. He's going to be discussing the craft they're sending, which will bounce on the moon. Bounce, not fly or hover or rove, but bounce. Bouncing on the moon coming up to round off the show. Now, before we start, here's a new thing I'm trying out for the Skeptic Zone. If you download an free app called Voice Byte, and there's a link on the website at skepticzone.tv, or the link is voicebyte, byte.com, you can send in 15-second questions or comments directly to me, directly to the Skeptic Zone. And at the same time, those little voice clips can be sent out on your Twitter feed or your Facebook feed. All you have to do is make the recording and use the hashtag Skeptic Zone. And we even have the very first contribution, and this one's from my dear friend Celestia Ward.
Hi, Richard. It's Celestia Ward from Squaring the Strange podcast. My question for you is, what do you think is the most dangerous form of woo or pseudoscience facing the human race right now?
Wow, that's an interesting question. It's a bit of a tough question. I'm going to have a think about that during the show and give you my answer. In fact, we can all have a think about that, and I'd be interested to know what you think about that. But now it's time for me to run downstairs and have some lemon cookies with almonds and a bit of toast with cream cheese and watercress. There's an interesting combination. While I do all that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Joining me now all the way from Poland, it's none other than Susan Gerbic from Guerrilla Skepticism on Wikipedia. Hello, good morning and good evening, I think, Susan.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, it's delightful I can actually see you. You look like you've had a wonderful time. You've been attending the European Skeptics Congress. How's it going, or is it over now?
Well, it's Saturday night right now, so we just got off a gala cruise. We went and cruised around, and Mark Edward did a little magic, and Randy was there, and it was so much fun. And then, so tomorrow morning we have a few lectures, and I think Massimo Polidoro is going to interview Randy, and they're going to do some other things, and then the Congress, the actual board they've got to try to decide where they're going to have the next Congress at in 2 years. And then I'm getting in a car, and I'm going with Mark Edward, Andras Pinter, and Lubodor from Bulgaria. We're going to go to Dresden to spend the night and then go on to Göttingen, Germany.
Wow, what a great trip you've had. And folks, in a minute we'll be playing some little interviews Susan and Mark were doing along the way, one from Sweden and one from Denmark. It sounds like you've been having a wonderful time, and I take it the Congress has been a most enjoyable experience so far.
The people are amazing, and this Congress has been so much fun because there's so many different languages. I mean, you turn around and there's somebody speaking in Czech, and somebody next to him is speaking in Polish, and the person next to him is speaking in Italian, and somebody's got English. It's terrific.
That sounds great. I'm so jealous.
You've been mentioned many times, Richard.
Oh, I have.
Missed.
Oh, no, me, no. That's very.
Oh no, you are missed. Your name has come up in the Skeptic Zone podcast, and Eran did a wonderful lecture this morning. And he was talking a lot about what's going on in Australia with a lot of pride, and he has a lot of great reason to. It was, and several people pointed out and asked him questions during the panel talking about different things that are happening in Australia. People around the world are aware of what's going on in Australia. Trust me.
That's very nice to know. Very nice to know indeed. Well, I think you should get to bed so you're nice and fresh for tomorrow's part of the Congress. Again, I'm very jealous I can't be there. Thank you for sending me some reports along the way, which we'll be playing in just a second. And please give my best to everybody, but especially James Randi.
I sure will. Thanks. Hello, everyone. This is Susan Gerbic from the Guerrilla Skepticism on Wikipedia project. I'm in Sweden, and I have just toured a castle in Sweden, and I'm not going to pronounce it because I will totally butcher it, I'm sure. But I'm here having a salad and a croissant, or what is this? Not a croissant, it's a cinnamon bun.
Fika. We have a fika here. It's a Swedish tradition.
A fika. So, I'm here with Adrian and Mark Edward, and we are getting ready to go back to the hotel room because we're going to be speaking at the Swedish VOF group tonight about guerrilla skepticism on Wikipedia. Hopefully I'll get a few editors tonight, and Mark will be talking about psychics.
Yeah, our group. So this is the Skeptics in the Pub.
Who are you?
So I'm Adrian Lozano, and I'm managing the Skeptics in the Pub in Stockholm, and I also in the board of director of VOF.
Our host.
And apparently I'm also the host. So I'm taking care of Susan and Mark here these 2 days you're here.
Making sure we don't get lost.
Yeah, exactly, because obviously that was needed.
I get lost easily.
Yeah, and it's easy to get lost in Central Station also. So yeah, I think we're going to have a very great time tonight. It's an English pub. So people are going to be have drank enough beer, so they're going to enjoy the speech easily. You don't have to say much. They're going to think it's great anyway.
Anyway, Skeptic Zone listeners, we're excited to get to come along on our journeys through Scandinavia and Europe, and we are thinking of you.
The Australian Skeptics are mentioned quite a bit as a group of people who are really getting out there and doing things. I went to a party last night and we talked about many of the things that are happening with the Australian Skeptics, and everybody, when I mentioned your names, they said, "Oh yes, of course, homeopathy and the work that they're doing there in Australia is
putting everyone else to shame."
Yeah, that's what Mark said. Australia is putting everyone else to shame because you and the Brits are really getting a lot of stuff done. Oh, name the castle. Where are we at?
Well, it's Swedish Royal Castle. It's Stockholm. Well, the old name was 3 kronor, but the new, I think it's called just the castle.
Okay, so we're at the castle. We're at eating outside of the castle. Hello, Skeptic Zone listeners. This is Susan Gerbic, and right now I'm here with Mark Edward and Klaus Larsen in Copenhagen. And last night we spoke to the Copenhagen Skeptics, and we're spending the day traveling through Copenhagen, and then we're going to go to Malmö in Sweden, and Mark and I will be speaking there tonight to the VOF Skeptics in Malmö. One of the things that Klaus and Mark and I are talking about is the importance of face-to-face interactions, like at conferences and events, where you sit down, you share a beer with them, you talk over dinner or lunch, and learn about what other groups are doing, what other successes they're having, what other needs they have.
Yeah, well, this is Klaus. Hi, everyone. We've been talking about this, how to get things done. A lot of skeptic groups, they get together and the intentions are great, but then not a lot of things, well, maybe not a lot of things, but not enough things are happening. We've tried to come up with a way of getting things to get done, and one suggestion would be that we treat projects with a set scope, a set time frame, a set economy, and then we focus on one thing. For instance, it could be there's a new psychic in town. Okay, let's start from the beginning. Let's follow this psychic. Let's investigate. Also from the assumption that, or the possibility that he could actually be the right thing, but if he's not, let's document what he does so that his followers may see that he may not be as psychic as he could be. But it's important that from the start we have leadership, established leadership, and we have a clear list of people who knows how to do specific jobs, and when they commit to them, they follow through. And of course, everyone is credited as they should be, of course, but treat a project like it would have been a normal project. For instance, in IT, we have to solve this problem.
Business.
It's a business. It's like a business,
treat
but
it like a business.
Yeah, absolutely.
But with goals, I think having smaller groups take on smaller tasks.
Yes.
Or bigger tasks in the long run, with, like you say, with a clear goal. But I don't want to de-emphasize the fact that we need to be able to have conferences and regular meetings to keep people energized and growing the community with lectures, skeptics in the pubs. Find out what other people are doing to be inspired and keep motivated. And that's why we need the conferences. But I think that if groups can form to, instead of just having a broad feel of we're going to form a group and we're going to be doing a lot of things, I think I agree with Klaus, is that you pick one specific thing to work on for a period of time and have clear goals, and when that's over, it's over. Move on to another project, maybe with a different team, maybe with a different focus. Learn as you go, but you have to report back on what you did.
Yeah, too many things going on at once is why Susan and I have decided to just do it ourselves, because we came up against most of the groups we were involved with. We're just trying to juggle way too many things. And there's a phrase that I learned when I was working as a psychic, which is, the cat that plays with too many mice goes without dinner.
Very good.
And if we can decide who the fattest, juiciest mouse is and pounce on it, the other ones will be around and we can maybe eventually turn to them too. But I think we have to decide who the fattest mouse is and don't give up and don't let go of it until we've had our dinner.
Thank you all from Copenhagen, Denmark.
It never ends. A friend starts talking about his new Reiki master, and someone else just posted about another all-natural cancer cure that they don't want you to know about. As skeptics, we dedicate a lot of time trying to protect those around us, but there's a way that you can reach millions. Guerrilla Skepticism on Wikipedia is a group that is working to keep the best skeptical information at everyone's fingertips in all languages. Join us. Training is self-paced and fun, and we have our very own super secret Facebook group. You will be educating the world in your sleep. To find out more, email us at gsowteam@gmail.com. Guerrilla Skepticism. The time is now.
Music by bensound.com.
From the website of Australian Skeptics, skeptics.com.au. Bent Spoon nominations for 2017. ABC, NICM, Newcastle City Council, and more. By Tim Mendham, published on the 21st of September 2017. The nominations for the 2017 Australian Skeptics Bent Spoon Award have been published, featuring an array of potential winners and dis-honourees. The spoon is awarded to the most preposterous piece of paranormal or pseudoscientific piffle of the year and is one of the least sought-after awards on the Woo calendar. Past winners include Paleo Pete Evans, Homeopathy Plus, the Lutec free energy generator, a whole range of universities, and a psychic dentist. This year's nominees include the ABC, that's ABC Television, Late Line program for a story extolling the dubious virtues of biodynamic farming and the wonders of burying cow horns full of manure to help wine grow. Another nominee is the National Institution of Complementary Medicine and its academic parent, Western Sydney University, UWS. The NICM, a nominee last year, continues to promote all sorts of pseudo-medical treatments on its website under the umbrella of complementary medicine. These include homeopathy, reflexology, spiritual healing, crystal therapy, Reiki, the list goes on. NICM promised to review its position on these areas last year, but obviously thought so much of them they were retained. NICM and UWS are also preparing a clinic on campus to treat public patients with traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, a range of treatments with serious questions about their effectiveness. The Newcastle City Council and the Newcastle Herald have been nominated for giving the keys to the city to a psychic who can see the past, present and future and can connect people with dead relatives. The Herald, which has performed sterling work in the past exposing child sexual abuse in the local Catholic Church, has let this story slip through its critical net without so much as a, quote, claimed to be psychic, end quote, in sight. Members of the public and the skeptical community are invited to make their own submissions. Visit www.skeptics.com.au for a full story on the spoon, including its history and past winners, links to the list of 2017 nominees, and how to nominate your own worthy recipients. Now, the Bent Spoon will be awarded in late November, so you have a little bit of time left if you want to nominate a product or a service or and even an individual. You can do that via the website. We will have a look at your nominations to make sure they comply with the guidelines, and who knows, maybe your email will lead to the awarding of this year's Bent Spoon Award. And now, direct from the cafe at Australia's Science Channel, it's Brew Ha Ha. Science in less time than it takes to order a coffee. With Kelly Wong.
Throw away your textbooks. Technology is putting women back in their rightful place in history. Researchers have used genomic analysis to confirm that a skeleton from a famous Viking warrior grave belonged to a female. Back in the 1880s, a grave was found with a skeleton that looked like it belonged to a high-ranking officer. Naturally, anthropologists and historians assumed it was a man. Why else would a skeleton be buried with all the belongings of a warrior? Even though Viking art and poetry have depicted women beside men in battle. Fast forward to the 1970s, when reanalysis of the skeleton based on bone morphology identified her as female, but was still dismissed. But now, in 2017, the historians can finally stop arguing, thanks to genetic confirmation. The researchers say that the results call for caution against generalizations regarding social orders in past societies. With sophisticated genetic tools at our disposal, we can rewrite history.
For more Brew Ha Ha and Australian science, visit www.australiascience.tv or visit Australia's Science Channel on Facebook. A Piece of His Mind with Professor Paul Willis.
It was with some reluctance that I took my son to see the latest Spider-Man movie. And don't get me wrong, I love the quality father-son time of a trip to the movies, and my reluctance wasn't based around the violence, misogyny, or any age-inappropriate material that might be in the film. I was more concerned about the distraction of telling fictional stories of mythical heroes when our attention ought to be focused on real-world problems and their solutions. And it's not just the latest crop of superhero films. There must be something deeply ingrained in the human psyche that has always hankered for mythical heroes to solve our real-world problems. Something lurking deep inside our brains that shackles us to the unrealistic answers to real threats that confront us. We live in a time where there is no place for heroes. We do not have the luxury of time to create fictional heroes who vanquish non-existent foes in make-believe worlds. There are no heroic solutions to the real problems we face every day. And there are many problems that we need to confront. The solutions to global climate change, overpopulation, pollution, overuse of resources, undersupply of energy, and so on, will not include one white knight in shining armour riding out of the mists of mythology. History is a long chronicle of the actions of heroes, of kings and emperors, admirals and generals who fought battles to save their nations and conquer foreign lands. This history is written by the heroes, but when you scratch the surface and take another perspective, you often find that they were not heroes at all. The histories of the vanquished, of the conquered, of the dispossessed, cast other people's heroes as villains and the merchants of evil. Ultimately, the key religious figures, gods and goddesses, mythical beasts and elemental forces, were heroic figures able to intercede in world affairs for the betterment of humanity. Even in our supposedly enlightened modern age, there are still those who place their faith in mythical religious heroes to solve real-world problems. And I think this is doubly dangerous. not only the danger in the fact that mythical entities can do nothing in the real physical world, but such beliefs absolve the followers of responsibility for addressing and resolving these problems. Isn't it time that we all stood up and took responsibility for our actions? I contend that we could all work collectively. We could all work together to save the day. We can all become the heroes. Most of the world's problems are caused by lots of people doing a little bit wrong, often out of ignorance, sometimes out of malice, but mostly only minor infractions on a personal level, iterated billions of times across the people of the world. So perhaps the heroes of today need to be every single one of us, consciously doing something good, something right, something that will address the problems that we face. I did relent, and we went off to see the movie, which we both thoroughly enjoyed. A short escape from the woes of the world around us. Yes, it's only entertainment. Yes, it is meant to be escapist, but we still need to keep that hero worship mentality in perspective. It's one thing to have a short escape for a couple of hours in a darkened theatre, but inevitably we have to return to the reality of daylight when the movie comes to an end.
Dr. Harriet Hall, MD, known to thousands as the Skepdoc, a retired family physician and former Air Force flight surgeon. She writes about medicine, so-called complementary and alternative medicine, science, quackery, and critical thinking. Harriet now has a free course, a series of 10 video lectures on science-based medicine and alternative medicine. The videos and an accompanying course guide can be found by following the link at skepdoc.info or by visiting web.randy.org/educational-modules.html. Topics covered in the series are science-based medicine versus evidence-based medicine, what is CAM, chiropractic, acupuncture, homeopathy, naturopathy and herbal medicine, energy medicine, miscellaneous alternatives, pitfalls in research, and science-based medicine in the media and politics. Harriet covers each topic in a matter-of-fact, no-nonsense way that's sure to educate and entertain. skepdoc.info.
Over the past few weeks, we've been keeping you up to date on the developments with a certain Dr. GP John Piesse, who you will recall stood up at the end of a screening of the movie Vax in Melbourne some weeks ago to announce that he was aiding and abetting parents who wanted to avoid vaccine. The news is that he has now been suspended from practice, but there's more to this story. Of course, if there were any doubts about his motivation, we need only turn to the pages of the Australian Vaccination Skeptics Network, which still have the URL avn.org.au, not AVSN, but that's by the by. They have published an article written by Dr. John Piesse, and it says here, below is an article Dr. Piesse has submitted to the Melbourne Age. It is reprinted with his permission. I don't know if the Melbourne Age have printed this article. Now, I won't read it all, but I think the first paragraph gives you a good understanding. It says, I have been encountering cases of vaccine injury for over 40 years. In June, it was a happy, healthy, nearly 5-year-old whose parents were required to put her on a catch-up schedule in order to get her into kindergarten. She won't be going to kinder. She's in a wheelchair, brain damaged, her life ruined. Then came a friend's father who died after a flu vaccine. And last week, a 4-year-old boy made autistic by a catch-up schedule. Now, he goes on to repeat a lot of the tropes and a lot of the misinformation we've heard over many years from the anti-vaxxers, including the paragraph here: vaccines contain health-damaging ingredients, not the least aluminium, a known neurotoxin implicated along with mercury in brain damage, as in autism, developmental delay, ADHD, and learning difficulties. And it goes on. So let there be no doubt as to his frame of mind. But as I mentioned before, he has been suspended, and we read quickly from an article at the abc.net.au, published on the 15th of September 2017. A Melbourne doctor who has been under investigation for his anti-vaccination stance has had his licence to practice suspended. Dr John Piesse's practice in Mitcham was raided by the Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Agency, AHPRA, and police officers last week, following allegations he had helped families to avoid compulsory childhood vaccinations. He had agreed to stop practising temporarily while AHPRA investigated the matter, but the Medical Board of Australia Immediate Action Committee met on Thursday and decided to suspend his registration while the investigations into his practice continued. And we discover another aspect to this saga, as reported at the Herald Sun, www.heraldsun.com.au. On the 16th of September, kinder kids with suspect vaccination exemptions identified in Dr John Piesse probe. And this is a story by Grant MacArthur, the health editor. And the story says the futures of unvaccinated students at more than 15 kindergartens and childcare centres are under a cloud because they have exemptions granted by rogue anti-vax GP Dr John Piesse. Many more kindergartens could still be brought into the anti-vaccination scandal, while the full extent of suspect immunisation exemption forms may never be known due to gaping holes in the Australian and Victorian no-jab laws. The Herald Sun has learned that more than 15 early childhood centres have so far informed the Department of Education that they have unvaccinated students attending with exemption forms signed by the Mitcham GP. Dr John Piesse's medical registration was suspended on Thursday following revelations in the Herald Sun that he claimed to have helped up to 600 families avoid compulsory vaccinations. I'll link to that story in the show notes. It does go on with some more information. Well, this story keeps unfolding, and it was really brought about because the documentary Vaxxed was being shown up and down the east coast of Australia, and once again reminds us of the old saying, give them enough rope. Or one of my favourite ones was, these people only open their mouths to change feet. And we can find this more and more, or quite frequently anyway, when you let people with extraordinary points of view speak their mind. And as ever, we will bring you any updates as they come to hand.
Hey, Richard.
Oh, hi, Trish. Hi. Would you like a coffee?
Yeah, thanks. What are you working on?
I'm trying to come up with a new promo to play on the Skeptic Zone.
Who's it for?
The Good Thinking Society in the UK. You know, Michael Marshall, Simon Singh, Laura Thomas and that crowd.
Oh, yeah, I know them. Oh. They've been doing some great work investigating veterinary homeopathy.
Veterinary homeopathy? What, you sugar pills for cows?
I know, right? And also they're looking at some of the dodgy medical advice given by UK chiropractors.
Really? Okay, look, I'll mention all that in the promo. Now, their website is goodthinkingsociety.org.
And they've recently been reporting on the resurgence of faith healer Peter Popov.
Peter Popov, great. Okay, look, thanks for that. It gives me something good to think about.
Great let's all take this with a grain of salt. Here's Eran Segev.
I'm in St. Louis in the Moonrise Hotel, and I'm attending a gathering of astronomy enthusiasts who are looking forward to watching the eclipse tomorrow together. And I am here with Yoav Landsman, who have met about 5 or 6 years ago, I think it was, in Israel.
Probably.
Because you're also involved with the Israeli skeptics, or were involved with the Israeli skeptics, if they still exist.
We are still exist as people.
Yeah.
Maybe less organized, but we're still there.
Okay, but we won't be speaking much about skepticism now. What I would like to speak to you about is Space IL. Could you tell us what Space IL is?
Space IL is the Israeli team in the Google Lunar XPRIZE competition. The mission is to develop and launch a spacecraft, a robotic spacecraft, and to land it on the moon, to take pictures and to travel at least 500 meters on the surface or above the surface of the moon, and of course transmit the pictures and the video back, and all that with private funding.
So just to clarify something, you said travel. It's actually a hop, right? Not a, or is it traveling across?
We're doing a hop. Most of the other teams develop a rover that's going to move across on the surface.
But you chose a hop.
We choose a hop.
Why is that?
We registered to the competition at the last moment. That's the Israeli way. By then, all of the other groups were already in development of 2 or 3 years. And we figured out that if we are going to develop a rover in addition to the spacecraft, then it's a completely additional project, and we cannot afford that. We don't have the time, we don't have the people. We found another way. We just use the same spacecraft that landed at the first time on the surface, with the same propulsion system, with the same landing gear. We take the complete spacecraft and just make it hop.
And this was when? You're talking about when you made that decision, when you joined the competition, that was?
That was 2011.
Okay, so 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And how far along are you now, in 6 years later?
It took us some time. We need 2 major redesigns that we had to do in order to make it. But currently we're in integration. It means that most of the spacecraft, the structure, propulsion system, and most of the sensors and the electronics are already in our hands. And we're now assembling the spacecraft and begin the testing of the units. Later on it will be the testing of the whole system. So it's advanced development.
And when do you expect to be finished?
It will be finished by the end of this year or at the beginning of the next year. The launch will be next year. We already have a launch. Actually, it was one of the requirements of the competition in order to make it to the final. At the beginning, there were 33 teams that were registered, and by last year, only 16 teams were still at the competition, and only the ones who already had a launch contract continue to the finals. And therefore, there are only 5 teams in the competition right now. We were the first team to have a contract.
Who's your contract with?
It's with the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket, but the contract is with the Spaceflight. It's a company that connects the launching service, the provider of the rocket, with the clients. Because it's a small spacecraft, we can't have a complete rocket for ourselves, and we need to share the ride with others. Spaceflight provides that service.
What is your role in this project?
I'm a senior systems engineer, and system engineer is the one that can understand all the other fields of engineering in order to make the orchestra play together. Because you have the electrical engineers and the structure engineers and the avionics engineers and the attitude control engineers and computer engineers, and each one of the group has excellent people, and they can do their work to make a high-level product. But someone needs to make the effort of combining and integrating all of their works, and to make the compromises in order to have one system that is working according to what you have to get in order to have the right results. I'm a senior engineer. I'm a system engineer for spacecraft 15 years.
That's a while.
Yeah. Although this is my first deep space mission.
So when you say deep space, you mean beyond orbit?
Beyond Earth orbit.
And how many people are there in the project altogether?
I think, if I remember correctly, we are about 30 people.
Okay. What about testing? Where do you do the testing and how?
Several levels of testing. There are the unit level testing, which means that you get from suppliers, it's an electronic box, and you have the documents of this box, and you need to check that everything in the document is according to the requirements and according to what's documented. We began doing the landing impact tests, which means that you take complete sets of landing gear and study the impact effects on different kinds of materials. Lunar dust simulated sand on surfaces that are harder than sand and stuff like that. It's a complete set of tests to see if the design works. There will be another test of the complete structure model of the spacecraft with the 4 legs in a facility outside of Israel. They have a robotic arm that can simulate the landing, or actually the impact on the ground on changing scenarios. For example, on a slope, or when you're not exactly stabilized. That means that one leg is hitting hard on impact, and what's happening to the spacecraft if it's rotating because of that. And it's a lot of scenarios with rocks, for example. What we try to achieve with that is to prove the design and to study the effects that might happen in less than optimal results.
So Space IL participates in the Google XPRIZE competition.
Right.
However, I presume that the goal of Space IL is not only to win the prize. I mean, even if you don't win the prize, there are some achievements that you're looking forward to making.
That's right. We are, first of all, we are non-profit. Our main goal is educational. We thought that from day one, that if we're going to land a spacecraft on the moon and nobody knows about that, it's a complete... it's useless. It has no meaning. And if we're going to go for this tremendous endeavor, we have to use it as a leverage for the education of young people in Israel, of kids and youth, especially in the fields of STEM. So we have a very large group of volunteers that give lectures to anyone free of charge in Israel, mainly for schools, but also for kindergartens and to adults at companies and at seminars and on conventions and everywhere. We count the kids that we encounter, and we already gave lectures to several tens of thousands of kids all around the country.
Well, the country the size of Israel, that's a sizable proportion of the children in Israel.
We want to reach actually everyone, because if the kids learn about Space IL and they're excited about that, their parents will know about that for sure. Yeah. Currently we're taking a very small scientific apparatus, small magnetometer sensor, which will get measurements during the landing, which is where the magnetic field of the moon is important, because the moon doesn't have a magnetic field of its own, at least not a global one, but you have a magnetic field on the surface because of the rocks. It's very local. And there are a lot of questions about that, scientific questions about the origin of the moon that needs this data in order to get answered. The only way of getting this answered is by flying very close to the ground. So during the landing, we're going to record that magnetic field.
And during the hop?
And during the hop. There are a lot of interesting things on the moon that were never been researched.
So it sounds like you're planning to stick around if it happens, if there are opportunities in the future of Space IL.
Probably, I'll just say that if there will be a chance of participating in a more exciting mission, then I might want to do that.
Okay, we'll make sure that we have your CV ready on our website.
No problem with that.
Yeah.
I think that the spirit of this competition is to show people that it can be done. When the competition was announced the first time, I think it was 2007, it was something impossible. It's something that if government wants to do that, they can do that. They've already done that. The United States did it, NASA did it, and the Russians, and lately the Chinese. This is proof that the private sector can do that also. The reasoning of doing that is still debatable, but it can be done. Doing the impossible is something that ignites the imagination, and I think that's worth doing. And I think this is the spirit of this competition. It's not about money or commercial business. It's about imagination. And when we talk with kids about what we're doing, you can see it in their eyes that they believe in us and they want to do something in order to help us. And that something is maybe to be the engineers or the scientists of the next generation missions. For example, a lot of kids ask the question of what's going to happen with the spacecraft after we finish the mission. And we're telling them that it's going to stay there. We can't launch it back from the moon. But if they want to participate or to lead the next mission of retrieving it back to Earth, then it's something they can do.
Go study STEM subjects.
Yeah.
That's a very good message. If people want to find out more about the competition in general and about Space IL in particular, where do they go?
The competition is on a website. Just Google GLXP, Google Lunar XPRIZE. You will find that very easy. Space IL is on www.spaceil.com, also very easy. And you can have all the information there.
Okay, Yoav Landsman, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Grain of salt now. Grain of salt, you gotta take it with a...
The New Zealand Skeptics Conference is happening on the weekend of the 24th to the 26th of November in Wellington. The weekend starts on Friday evening with a pub quiz all about skepticism and is open for anybody registered for the conference. The New Zealand Skeptics have a great lineup for the conference, both on Saturday and Sunday. They're especially excited to have Cara Santa Maria from the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe podcast, and Britt Hermes, ex-naturopath, who now blogs for science-based medicine, joining them this year from overseas. But they also have some fascinating locals and some Australian speakers too. You can see a list of the current lineup of speakers by visiting the conference website, conference.skeptics.nz, and tickets are very reasonably priced and available for the entire weekend or just one day. On Saturday evening, the NZ Skeptics are hosting a dinner, separate registration required, where you can chill out with fellow skeptics, chat with the speakers, and enjoy some weird and wonderful entertainment. Now, if all that sounds like fun, please head to the website and book your ticket. Conference.skeptics.nz. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. Now, to recap that question from the beginning of the show.
Hi, Richard. It's Celestia Ward from Squaring the Strange podcast. My question for you is, what do you think is the most dangerous form of woo or pseudoscience facing the human race right now?
Yes, I've been having a bit of a think about that. And I don't think it's things like psychics and water divining, predicting the future, that sort of traditional stuff, people who believe in UFOs. I think that what presents the most danger to humanity in general would be the pseudoscience revolving around medical beliefs and opinions, especially when it comes to the conspiracy theories with anti-vaxxers, because their fear-mongering and activities have led to things like polio not being wiped out yet, or pockets coming back, or diseases coming back where they should have been consigned to the annals of history by now. So I think that probably presents the biggest danger to individuals, to people. I might be wrong. I'd be interested to hear your opinion. If you want to give me your opinion, you can do that via the Voice Bite app. And don't forget to use the hashtag Skeptic Zone so those messages get to me. Now, here's a little note from the Australian Skeptics, skeptics.com.au. If you want to keep up to date like I do, if you want to keep up to date with what's going on with Australian skeptics and the investigations and news and information, subscribe to the online newsletter. It gets sent direct to your inbox, skeptics.com.au, and click the link to subscribe to the regular newsletter. Coming up on the Skeptic Zone, I'm sure we're going to have some more reports from the globe-trotting Eran Segev, who is, as I speak, in Poland at the European Skeptics Congress. Also, look out, there is a new Bunga Bunga podcast with Maynard and Tim Ferguson. Just visit maynard.com.au for the latest Bunga Bunga podcast, but I'm sure you subscribe anyway. And lastly, thank you to the people who do chip in to help Maynard with Bunga Bunga via Patreon, and the people who do chip in to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Without your support, both podcasts, in fact, simply wouldn't exist. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. You can be part of the show by downloading the Voice Bite app at voicebite.com and using the hashtag Skeptic Zone. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian skeptics or any other skeptical organisation.